Alright, it is time to put your knowledge of the user interface to use, and we're going to make an object garden. It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. We are making a playpen full of standard primitives and extended primitives, and maybe some AEC extended, which is architectural, engineering, and construction, I believe. We can make walls, we can make foliage, which is a bunch of plants. Lots of good stuff. The purpose of doing this assignment is to allow you to play around with objects. Make sure you know how to name each object, change color, and make an interesting scene that makes you feel comfortable changing the parameters and really adjusting and playing with shapes for future projects. So I like to start off with a plane. I'm going to go ahead and view all four of my viewports here. I like starting off with a plane, and I like moving it to 0, 0, 0. I have not gone over this in previous tutorials, so if you go down here, you'll see the X, Y, and Z. This is the positioning of the object, so if I just do 0, 0, 0, gives me a perfectly centered object. Many of you, I've heard, don't like the grid. Either you can get used to it, gives you a nice frame of reference for your projects, or you can just press G on your keyboard and it gets rid of that grid for you. Alright, so toggle G if you'd like to do that. So I have my nice plane here. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to change the length and the width to an even 150 by 150. Notice my length segments are set to 4 and 4. This creates a grid of 4 squares by 4 squares. This can increase if I change it to 50 by 50. It makes more of a mesh. For this project, it doesn't matter. We're not doing anything with the plane except for making it a ground piece. So I'm just change the length and width segments to 1 and 1. So I have a nice little base to work with here. I'm going to rename it plane. You know what? Let's be more creative. Name it ground. Ground looks good. And what sounds interesting? The teapot's kind of cool. Go ahead and drag out a nice fun teapot here. I zoom into my teapot. I'm going to make the radius an even 20. You can do whatever you want. You don't even have to start off with a teapot if you don't want to. And notice that the edges here are a little bit not as smooth as they could be. If you just increase the number of segments, let's say like 16, you're going to get a smoother teapot. 34, you can get a smoother teapot as well. Let's see, didn't adjust here, so let's do 16. You see how the mesh increases. Do 34, it increases even more. Again, this is using more RAM, so just be nice with it. You don't use more than you have to. You can deselect certain teapot parts just to include whatever you'd like. For editing purposes, if you wanted to make this a little bit more customized, that's what you would do. So I'm going to make a teapot without a lid. Why not? Let's rename this guy Teapot. Maybe I say no lid. And go up here and you can change color. Nice blue, looks good. So notice in my other 4 viewports, you can see where my teapot is located. If I'm trying to make everything centered within this plane, maybe I want to keep my viewport in this, or my teapot in this top left-hand quadrant. I don't know, whatever you'd like to do. Go ahead and rotate it. Feel free to do what you'd like. This assignment is strictly to get you working with objects and drawing them out. Spheres we haven't really gone over yet, but they're just as easy to make as any other object in 3ds Max. I'm just going to bring this up a little bit. I'm going to go back to my front viewport and make it so it's just touching the base here. Name this sphere. Change the color. There are some cool things you can do with spheres if you go to the Modify tab. I'm just going to make this an even 30. Segments, again, are just going to smooth it out. So it's going to give you more segments, a little bit smoother mesh. You can also make a hemisphere. So if you change this to 0.5, you're going to get half of a sphere. You're cutting it in half. All right. So you can use that later on if you're creating objects. It's a lot easier than going in and deleting half the polygons. If you don't know what that means, don't worry. We'll get to that in a minute. You know, squashing the sphere, same thing. If you just click and drag, it's going to give you the same effect. So let's just do a 0.5. And let's go ahead and rotate this guy. That looks nice. All right, maybe dip that down a little bit. What you'll hear me say throughout the course is I really don't like floating objects. I like everything to be as even as possible. So keep in mind that if you really want something on a plane, make sure it's aligned properly. You see how the teapot is perfectly aligned on this black x-axis here? That's what you want. If you're trying to put objects on a table and it's like this, your viewer isn't going to be convinced. It's not going to be very realistic, right? So everything should be aligned at 0 on the x. Or I'm sorry, on the z. So you can see that right here. So let's go ahead and do a little cone. Some of these are 3-step processes. So I'll explain what I mean right there. Is here I'm drawing the base of the cone. I'm dragging up the height, but notice it doesn't have that cone-like structure yet. So I'm going to click again, and I'm going to bring it in, taper it, expand it, you know, whatever you really want to do. Depends on the look. Change radius 1 to let's do 25, that's the base. The height, let's just do an even 50. And the radius 2 is at 0 because my cone comes to a point. If I were to change that to 5, it gives me more of a base at the top. I like the point, so I'm just going to put it at 0. And sides, again, this is just like segments. It's to make it either smoother or with less detail. So if you do sides like 5, you're going to get more of a pentagonal shape than if I were to do 24. Just going to be more of a smooth cone. So you guessed it, change the name to cone, change the color, green. And that looks nice, doesn't it? Alright, so standard primitives I'm bored with. So I'm going to go down to extended primitives here. And we have all these funky names which some of you may have heard of. They might be a different language to you. That's okay. Let's just go and click through them. Hydra. Alright, what does it look like to you? Right now it's dipped in between my planes. If I bring it up, it's like a big diamond here. I'll rotate my viewport so you can see this. Yeah, it's a nice looking Hydra. I'm going to go ahead and change the size of my plane here to maybe like 250. Just so I have a nice base to work with. Alright, so I have my Hydra. Go back to my Create tab. I'm still under Extended Primitives. Chamfer box is really used for only specific purposes. So I'm going to drag out the box here, drag it up. It's like, oh yeah, regular box. It's not. The third function allows you to smooth out the sides. If any of you have any engineering or architectural background knowledge, chamfer and fillet, this is really just going to be used to smooth out the edges. So you can adjust the fillet here. I'm not really sure what you would use it for. I've used it for creating books, just different objects in the scene. You know, totally up to you, but it's there if you want to use it. Alright. Oil tank is just also what it sounds like. You can change the, kind of like a capsule here. You can use it for making pills. I'm just going to go ahead and call it pill to make it easy for us. And if you haven't noticed already, I just like having everything be even. Just makes it easier for me. And notice if I change the number of sides, which you might be getting a hold of this now. So smooth it out, make it a little bit more precise. We'll make this pill red. Another kind of cool one is this torus knot. I'm a big fan of using this. It's funky, it's cool. This is again another two-stepper. So you click and you drag for the size, and your second click is going to be the thickness of the torus. So let's go back to my 4 viewports. I can just kind of see where it is. I want this resting right on the x-axis there. So notice it's just hovering above that. If I look here in my left viewport, I can go to my top and see where it is in conjunction with the rest of my shapes. So again, I can just move this around however I'd like. And I haven't really done much with rotating these objects, so whatever you want to do. But ideally, I want you to have about 15 shapes in your object garden. Let's see. Yeah, that looks kind of cool. We'll sink that down. Why not? Alright, but notice I'm working with all 4 of my viewports. It really makes it easy for me to navigate my scene. We'll change the color of my torus knot. Yeah, let's do yellow. Alright. And let's just go back to standard and let's do one more torus here. And rotate this. So notice that's intersecting a little bit. I can change the radius here. Tilt this around, see how that looks now. Nah, still intersecting my oil tank there. I like that more. Kind of looks like a big San Francisco arc, or I'm sorry, St. Louis arc. Alright, so that's all I'm going to show you for the standard and extended primitives here. I want to go into these AEC objects. So foliage, you can start making your palm trees. I know as summer is coming to an end, I would love to be in the warm weather, so palm trees look good. These objects work the same way as anything else, so if you go into the Modify tab, you can change the height. 375 inches is a little too tall for my taste here, so let's maybe go down to 250. No, that looks okay. Let's actually do 150 here. So my nice little palm tree. You see it's sinking below my x-axis here. I'm just going to drag this right up. Make it flush. That looks cool. When you drag out foliage, you're going to notice that it has this big bubble for the leaves. This is a way for the computer to save RAM. It's not going to process every single branch, every leaf, or else your computer's going to just go so slowly. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to render it really quick after I name this palm tree. So when I render it, you'll be able to see the individual leaves. I'm just going to zoom in here. So the active viewport is now active. I know that because it's highlighted in yellow. There's 2 ways I can go to render. 3 ways actually. I can click on this teapot here, render production. If I go to rendering render, that's also going to achieve the same function. And I can also do Shift Q, which is a nice little keyboard shortcut for rendering. So let's just go ahead and do the render production. And oh, look at that nice object garden. You can see all the branches of my palm tree. You can see this chamfer box. You can see the oil spindle against this nice black background. If you would like to change your background, especially for printing purposes, if you don't want to use that much black ink, go ahead and go to the rendering tab in the menu. Go down to environment. And the background is the first under common parameters. Just click the color box and you can change it to pink, orange, green, or just simple white. And we'll render this again. And you see that I now have my object garden in front of a white background. You can also add environment maps, which you can get JPEGs off the internet or other images off the internet, same thing, to just give it a different look. So let's go back to our Create tab and go to Wall. The cool thing about 3ds Max is you can actually create walls and do more architectural elements. So let's just click out a couple walls here. Boom, cool. The wall creation tool is just do a left click to start, left click to end the first wall. After I left click again, I still have my wall that can keep going around. So there I can choose to left click again to keep making it, or if I'm all done, it'll say weld point. You can say sure. Or you can just right click and it'll get rid of that. But we'll talk about walls a little bit more later. So rename it, change color. And of course you can change the height of the wall here as well. But you can only do that before you begin creating it. So last but not least, let's go down and look at stairs. If I want to do a nice spiral staircase that's going right up to my palm tree or whatever it may be, just go back here. I'm going to drag it out. You can see where the stairs are going to start and drag it up. So I have a nice staircase going to nowhere, the clouds, but that's okay. So you can change all the parameters of the stairs here. If I want to put this down to 25. Number of revolutions, it's only twisting a quarter or 3/4 of a turn. So if I can do this like 1.75, notice how that changes. The width of my entire staircase, we'll just put this again at like 26. 26. Whatever you think. You can change the risers. Change your riser height. And again, the carriage railings, all that good stuff. I'm not going to get into that since we're just playing here. But you're probably getting the feeling that you can really customize everything to make it how you want within this 3D program. It's really powerful, you can do a lot of really great stuff, and I just want to use this assignment to demystify everything for you. Everything is customizable however you'd like. We will learn those techniques later on, but this is just an overview of the number of things that you can do, whether you're going into gaming or animation or you aspire to work for DreamWorks, whatever it may be. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Go ahead and save this project as your last name _ object garden into your folder, and we can move on to the next step.